only are you under no obligation to hire an attorney simply because you meet with them, but if you do become dissatisfied with the representation that you're getting from an attorney, you can let that attorney go and hire someone else. Now, if you do that, the attorney that you originally hired will be able to collect for whatever work they've done. But if you meet with an attorney to find out about their services, you're under no obligation to hire that attorney. Many attorneys, if not most attorneys, will offer you an initial consultation without any charge. And that consultation is for you to learn about the attorney's services and determine if that's someone that you're comfortable with representing your interests.
So let's talk a second about some common types of claims that may be occurring here on the Mississippi coast, and something that's more specific to oil disaster litigation. We'll be seeing folks who are fishermen, fishboat captains, employees of vessels, and maybe seafood processors and packers. Let's just talk generally about that collection of folks and what the court system and the litigation that's unfolding right now might have in store for them.
The people who have business losses associated with the oil spill most of those cases are going to be brought in federal court. Those are courts of the United States. And most of them will wind up being heard by a single judge. Now, we do not know where that judge is going to be sitting, as we say yet. It could be in New Orleans, it could be in Houston, Texas, it could be in Mobile, Alabama. That decision will be made in July, but we can be fairly sure that most or all of those claims will be heard by a single judge. And there will be a very large group of lawyers who will be participating in that proceeding, but the judge will appoint a group of lawyers who will have the responsibility of communicating with British Petroleum and the court on behalf of all the people there.
What's that referred to?
That's called a multi-district litigation. And it's a common process that's used when there are large numbers of claims that all involve the same subject. Now, typically, you can expect a multi-district litigation to take quite some time to work out, anywhere from months to years for any kind of resolution. Now, in the case of this oil spill, that does not mean that people would not see any recovery, because the claims process that we spoke about earlier has been set up, and it is important for people to find out if they can participate in that process to make sure that they're getting whatever may be available as soon as possible.
Now, some folks may have started that process, or some may even have tried to present a claim against BP. Is there something specific about the Oil Pollution Act of 1990 that folks who are trying to present a claim against British Petroleum should know?
Yes, that's a very interesting question. The Oil Pollution Act is a statute that was passed after the Exxon Valdez oil spill about 20 years ago. And it was intended to make it easier for people like fishermen who are damaged by an oil spill to recover their damages. It does have one requirement. Before you can go to court under the Oil Pollution Act, you have to present your claim to the responsible party, in this case, British Petroleum. And that claims process is part of that presentment process, as it's called. Now, unfortunately, at this point, the guidelines that British Petroleum is using for that claims process are not very clear. However, as we understand it, and as we've seen so far, you will be assigned an adjuster in that process, just like an insurance adjuster that you might see after an automobile accident or after you have a claim on your house insurance. And that adjuster will be telling you what kind of documentation you will need to make your claim. In general, what we've been hearing and seeing is that British Petroleum will want several years of financial records showing what your income was and what your expenses were from your business.
Well, Robert, let's talk a little bit about any sort of issues that might relate to folks outside of the maritime or seafood business claims. Are there folks with property damage, folks whose businesses aren't directly connected with fisheries that may also need to present claims? What are some examples?
Well, there will be, and the question of whose claim British Petroleum will pay, how many types of claims, has not been fully answered yet. There certainly will be people who may have boats which get oil on them, who have property which may be damaged by oil, and interestingly, people who depend on seafood, crabs, shrimp, fish, for subsistence. In other words, as part of their diet. Those people can actually recover from British Petroleum as well. We don't know at this point exactly how those claims will have to be documented, although we can feel fairly sure that for people who have damaged property or the like, you will have to have some sort of evidence showing that there was oil on your property, what you did to clean it up, if there was a diminution or a change in value as a consequence of that. People in the tourism business certainly are also being affected, and I think in that area what you're going to need to document those claims is going to be similar to what we've seen with fishermen. You'll need your financial records for as long a period of time as you can get them, and you'll need to be able to show how your business was affected. Some of the ways that you could do this would be by comparing your sales in May to your sale in May of 2009 to your sales in May of 2010 when the oil spill was having some impact. Each business is going to be somewhat different in the way they have to put that together, but the key is really going to be going back and establishing what your income and expenses were and how those were likely to have been changed by the oil spill.
Now, there will be folks who, again, will be dealing with a commercial lawsuit for the first time in their lives, and it's obvious from things we've talked about that it's important for folks in that situation to collect documentation, information about their losses and their injuries, and efforts they made to try to keep those losses down in one location, one file where they can hand it over to their lawyer. And there's also an important need for folks who are in this claims process with BP to keep a very careful record of their communications with the BP adjuster. Would you explain for a second why it's important to do that, how statements made to the BP adjuster may come back in future litigation?
Certainly. One of the things that we learned after Hurricane Katrina is that record keeping on insurance claims, and really that's basically what we're talking about here with BP, is extremely important. If you have a conversation with an adjuster, if you send a piece of correspondence to an adjuster, then you should keep a record of that. We advise people to keep a diary in which you write down each conversation that you have with British Petroleum or anyone acting on their behalf, and keep up with the time and the date of each call and basically what the substance of the call might be. And that is because at some point later, if BP does not pay your claim, it will be important for you to be able to show that you presented that claim to them and gave them the opportunity to pay that claim before you went to court. Now, it's also a very good idea to keep a similar diary of things related to your business losses. For example,